Welcome back to the Association Pod. I'm your host, Aaron, manager of the Jimmy Chitwoods, coming at you again with another episode covering all things about our league. This week, we take a look at the power rankings for Week 11. We have a new team at the top of the rankings again. We have more changes down the line as well, and we're going to take a look at the reasons that teams are moving up and the reason teams might be moving down. We have some new faces coming into the spotlight in the Most Impressive Player of the Week nominees. We also have a couple of players continuing to impress and getting nominated again from their respective squads of the league. We also are going to cover one of the most controversial and most asked for topics. We will be handing out the in-season trade grades for the 2025-2026 season of the association. We're going to take a look at each team and what grade they received for the deals that have been made so far. It's going to be a great episode, so everybody strap in, and let's kick it right off with the Power Rankings breakdown. Kicking off the breakdown with a team in the number 12 rank, we have a big lump with Knobs. This week, we see Chris's squad taking a step back into the bottom rank after being 10th. Chris wishes his team performed a little bit better this week, as the squad finished 12th in assists and free throw percentage, 11th in points and rebounds, and 10th in three-pointers made. Chris's team continues to have a bright spot in the turnover rank, where this week they did finish with the third best turnover number. They also had the fifth best field goal percentage this week. Unfortunately, those stat categories were not enough to make up the other declines in the categories, and they drop back into the 12th spot. The nominee from the Big Lump with Knobs this week for the Most Impressive Player of the Week is Dyson Daniels. This week, Daniels was able to provide 55 points, 25 rebounds, 36 assists, and the Great Barrier Thief brought 7 steals and also 6 blocks to the table for Chris. The 7 steals and 6 blocks were third in those categories for the Most Impressive Player of the Week nominees. Daniels is filling the stat sheet in multiple ways for a Big Lump with Knobs, and he's hoping that his performance continues, and with some help from the rest of the squad, we could see Chris moving back up the power rankings after finishing 12th. Staying put where they were in last week's rankings, back in 11, is Benny's Bistro. The performance for Benny's squad this week was very similar to last week's, and it keeps it in the same spot as Week 10's rankings. The squad this week finished 12th in points and rebounds, 11th in field goal percentage and free throw percentage, and finished 10th in assists. The Bistro is cooking in turnovers, though, finishing with the best turnover number in the week, and is also getting a lot of steals and blocks on the defensive end. Benny's team finished tied for third in steals and finished third alone for blocks this week. Those great defensive numbers are definitely a bright spot that Benny wants to continue, along with improving in the other stat categories. A big help with those defensive stats is Miles Turner. Miles Turner is this week's Most Impressive Player of the Week nominee for Benny's Bistro. Turner was able to bring 13 blocks to the table, helping contribute to that third place finish in blocks for the team. Turner also gave 52 points, with 30 of those points coming from three-pointers and 22 rebounds. It was a strong performance for Benny's Bistro, showing that his defensive stats are something that every team could be envious of. The team we find next in the 10th spot is going to be Captain's Carnival. Taylor's squad is able to bounce back up the power rankings after they dropped to 12th in last week's rankings. While the team still did finish 12th in field goal percentage and 12th in steals, there was much improvement in the stat categories for the squad this week. They finished third in three-pointers made and fifth in rebounds, assists, and turnovers, helping bring the improvement in the rankings. Captain's Carnival is one of our teams that has a back-to-back nominee for the Most Impressive Player of the Week, with Jamal Murray being nominated again. Murray brings 102 points this week, with 11 three-pointers contributing. He also grabbed 25 rebounds and brought 40 assists to the table for Taylor's squad. Jamal Murray filled the void left with Nikola Jokic's injury on the Denver Nuggets and was able to bring some excellent playmaking, leading the nominees with the most assists from any squad. If Murray can continue to impress with the void being left by Jokic's injury, we might see Captain's Carnival continuing to climb up the power rankings again. Coming in the 9th spot, once again, we have Cat. Jordan's squad repeats as the 9th place spot in the power rankings for a second straight week. The squad was able to perform very well in field goal percentage, where they finished second, and assists, where they finished third this week. Unfortunately, there were still some categories needing improvement, as the team finished 12th in three-pointers made, 10th in blocks, and 10th in turnovers. For Jordan's team, we have another back-to-back nominee for Most Impressive Player of the Week, with Donovan Mitchell being nominated again. Mitchell continues to fill the stat sheet with 107 points this week, with 14 three-pointers contributing to that total. He also grabbed 24 rebounds, dished out 22 assists, and had a nominee leading 9 steals this week. If Donovan Mitchell continues the production he's been showing, we might see Cat climbing out of that bottom third in the power rankings. In the 8th spot this week, finishing one below their finish last week, is the Underdogs. Ryan S. is able to finish relatively similar to last week, despite having some drastically different performances in the stat categories. After finishing with the league best field goal percentage in week 10, the Underdogs come in 10th in this week for field goal percentage. They also were 11th in blocks and 11th in assists. They were able to improve in their turnover rate, having the second best turnovers in the league this week. The team also improved dramatically in their steals category as they finished tied for third this week after they were 11th in week 10. If Ryan S. can find some consistency across the board in the stat categories, as they've shown the potential to improve from a week-to-week basis, we might find them making another big jump like they did back in week 8 where they finished third. A massive contributor to finding that consistency for the Underdogs is Zion Williamson. Zion is the Most Impressive Player of the Week nominee for Ryan S.'s squad this week, putting up an impressive 110 points, the third most of any nominee this week, and also able to grab 25 rebounds. Zion was also active on the defensive end with both 4 steals and 4 blocks. If Zion can continue this output and staying healthy for the Underdogs, we could see Ryan S. finding some consistency in the stat categories and moving their way up the power rankings. In the 7th spot, taking a 1-spot jump, is Harry the Hawk. Kenny is able to leapfrog the Underdogs and put on an improvement in the power rankings this week from last. We saw Kenny finish with a little higher ceiling in the stat category performances this week, having a 3rd place finish in free throw percentage and finishing with the 4th best turnover number in the league. There's still room for improvement in the blocks category for Harry the Hawk, as the team finished 12th this week. And also, the team would like to see some more three-pointers going down as they finished 11th in threes. Norman Powell is nominated again after being the Week 9 nominee for Harry the Hawk. This week, he contributed 21 three-pointers, the most of any nominee this week, that helping give him 116 points total for the week. Norman is doing all he can to improve those three-pointers, and if a couple of his teammates on Harry the Hawk can bring a few more, we could see Kenny improving in that category and possibly improving in the power rankings. In the 6th spot, we're going to find next Malik's Monastery. For the 2nd consecutive time this season, we see Thomas's squad take a drop from the 1st place spot in the power rankings back down to 6th, as they did the same from weeks 8 to 9. The drop for Thomas in the power rankings this week is not too surprising considering the loss he did have with Nikola Jokic going down. We saw that loss contributing in the power rankings this week, as after finishing 1st in rebounds and assists in week 10, the team this week finished 7th and 9th in rebounds and assists, respectively. Malik's Monastery also dropped in steals this week as they finished 11th in that category as well. There were still some impressive performances on Malik's Monastery, but the nominee for Most Impressive Player is going to be Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren was able to provide 15 blocks this week, the most of any player nominee in week 11. Those 15 blocks helped Malik's Monastery be tied for 4th in that category. Holmgren also provided 69 points with 6 three-pointers being made and also snagged 44 rebounds, the most of any nominee this week. Chet Holmgren did all he could to fill the void left by Jokic, and Malik's Monastery still shows that they have a lot of firepower, but the team was still unable to prevent the drop in the power rankings this week. Next up, we have 2 teams finishing in the same spots they did in week 10. Starting off with the 5th spot, we find the Heatles. John Frank put on a very consistent performance across all the stat categories this week, with no performance worse than tied for 9th, and his best performance being 2nd, that being in free throw percentage. Having a very nice floor in the stat categories and a pretty good ceiling helps keep John Frank in the 5th spot for a 2nd straight week. Helping provide that consistency in the power rankings is going to be Anthony Black being nominated again for Most Impressive Player of the Week. Anthony Black continues to help John Frank in the assist category as he was able to dish out 25 assists this week, the 3rd most of any player nominated. He also was able to be active on the defensive end with 6 steals and also getting 6 blocks, a very impressive number from a guard. Black was able to still be productive on offense as well, with 87 points, 7 three-pointers being made, and providing that on 50% from the field. The consistency from Anthony Black week to week helps bring consistency for the Heatles in the power rankings this week. Finishing fourth again in the power rankings, we're going to find the Infirmary up next. Ryan W. Squad has a little different story to tell than John Frank and the Heatles. After being very consistent in the stat categories last week, we found a little more inconsistency in Ryan W. Squad. They finished tied for second in rebounds and second in steals this week, as well as being second in three-pointers made. However, they did have the second worst turnover rate, finishing 11th this week. They still were able to stay in the top third of the power rankings and continue to show impressive consistency across the season so far. A player that's been a nice surprise for the Infirmary and a first-time nominee for Most Impressive Player of the Week is Ryan Rollins. Rollins was able to score 70 points this week with 14 three-pointers being made, and Rollins was also able to provide 20 rebounds, 22 assists, and 6 steals for the squad this week. Rollins has been quite the surprise for the Milwaukee Bucks and is definitely a candidate for Most Improved Player in the NBA. And this week, he gets recognized as the Most Impressive Player of the Week nominee for the Infirmary. Making a return to the top 3 of the power rankings, we find aspirations of a title next. After 3 weeks outside the top 3, aspirations finally climbs their way back into a podium finish for the power rankings. We saw Tim come out with a dominant performance after being highlighted for the matchup of the week. They were able to finish first in field goal percentage, rebounds, assists, and steals, as well as putting out a first place finish in points, setting a new record for most points scored in a week with 1,023. Despite winning the matchup of the week 5-4, they did have a couple of marks that leave questions and concerns moving forward and why they were still number 3 in the rankings this week. Aspirations finished 12th in turnovers with triple digits in that mark being 111. And they also finished 10th in free throw percentage and 8th in blocks. This mixed bag of performances is why they were able to move up in the power rankings, but not able to climb up into the top spot. Player who was able to bring the improvement in the power rankings this week is Anthony Edwards. Edwards is the nominee from Aspirations of a Title for Week 11. Anthony Edwards was able to fill the stat sheet and also be highly efficient. He was able to score 121 points on 60.6% from the field. Those 121 points were the most of any player nominated this week. He also was able to bring 13 three-pointers, 16 rebounds, 14 assists, and 7 steals. Anthony Edwards is rounding into form and helping Aspirations of a Title take a climb back up the power rankings. In the second spot this week, we find the Jimmy Chitwoods. The Chitwoods were very consistent across the board, performing very well in multiple stat categories, finishing the week with the best free throw percentage, the most three-pointers made, and being second in blocks. The Chitwoods did not have any stat categories finishing worse than 9th this week. A young player that Jimmy Chitwoods is very happy to have on the squad is VJ Edgecombe. VJ was able to put on a great performance this week and show why he is one of the most impressive rookies of the 2025 class. This week, he provided 100 points with 13 three-pointers made, 15 rebounds, 11 assists, and 8 steals. Those 8 steals being second most of any nominee. Edgecombe was also able to shoot 56.9% from the field this week. A very impressive number, not only for a rookie, but for any player. VJ has been an impressive bright spot for the Philadelphia 76ers and has been one of the bright spots for the Jimmy Chitwoods as well. The team finding their way to the top spot of the power rankings this week is Wiggins of Nas. Nate's team is able to finish first in the power rankings this week after they went back-to-back in week 6 and 7 previously. This also gives them the most first-place finishes in the power rankings, as this is the 4th time they've been in the top rank. Despite losing the matchup of the week, there is much more consistency across Wiggins of Nas and the stat categories. They were able to finish first in blocks this week, as well as second in points, second in assists, and tied for second in rebounds. Adding in a third-place finish in field goal percentage and the 4th most threes, it's no surprise to see Wiggins of Nas taking the top spot despite the 4 and 5 finish. The consistency across the board is highly regarded in the power ranking system and is able to provide them a slight jump. There's another duo nominated from the same NBA team this week, as Tyrese Maxey is the nominee for Wiggins of Nas for Most Impressive Player of the Week. Tyrese has been performing incredibly well for the 76ers, as this week he was able to provide 104 points with 14 three-pointers being made, tied for second of the nominees this week. Maxey also grabbed 20 rebounds and dished out 26 assists, the second most this week. Maxey did all of this while also still shooting 61.2% from the field. The efficiency from Tyrese has been a huge benefit for the 76ers to be one of the surprises of the league, although it's no surprise that he's the nominee for Wings of Nas. For Week 11's Most Impressive Player of the Week, we're going to hand out the awards now. Receiving the bronze medal for Week 11 Most Impressive Player of the Week is Norman Powell. Powell from Harry the Hawk, being able to provide 21 threes, the most of any player this week, is why he's deserving of the bronze medal this week. The silver medal for Most Impressive Player of the Week in Week 11 goes to Chet Holmgren. The defensive performance with those 15 blocks, as well as snagging the most rebounds, is why Holmgren is receiving the silver medal this week. And finally, being the gold medal and being the most impressive player of the week performance for Week 11 is Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell is able to receive the gold medal after he did not receive any awards in Week 10 despite being nominated. The 9 steals, along with his production and rebounds, 3-pointers, and points, is why he's able to win Most Impressive Player of the Week for Week 11. It was another great week in the association. We saw some incredible performances, some changes in the power rankings, and we're looking forward to see how Week 12 shakes out. Before we continue with the episode this week, we'd like to highlight our proud sponsor, The Process Consulting, LLC. Is your team stuck in a rut and unable to contend for a championship anytime soon? Are you looking for something to shake up the roster and find a way to get some A-list players in the team? Look no further than The Process Consulting, LLC. Founded by Sam Hinkie, The Process Consulting is here to make sure that your favorite team stays bad for as long as possible, providing you with the most number of picks and the best chance of getting a superstar player. Warning, The Process Consulting, LLC does not guarantee championships or title contention. Please read the fine print before signing your contract with The Process Consulting, LLC. As we now cross into the new year, I think it's a perfect time for us to take a look at the trades that have happened so far during the season and dish out some grades for how teams performed in those deals. A couple of things to look at as these grades are handed out. We will be looking mostly at how the deals affect the season currently, but we will make note of how draft picks affect teams moving forward. We saw Benny's Bistro make the first deal of the season as they were able to acquire Domantas Sabonis from Harry the Hawk. In return, Kenny was able to get Devin Booker back in the deal. For this trade, I'm going to give Benny's Bistro a C grade. As we will see soon, Benny did not have Sabonis on the roster for very long, so the C grade is partially an incomplete grade as he only had him for a couple of games. As for Harry the Hawk, I'm going to dish out a C+ grade for getting Devin Booker. Devin Booker has played still very well this season, but he has not performed at his typical rank. As last season, he finished 23rd, and this season he's coming in at about the 77th rank on the season. For that, I'm only going to give Kenny a C+ grade. Next, we take a look at another player for player only trade going to one day later on November 1st. In this trade, the Infirmary was able to acquire Quentin Grimes in exchange for Daniel Gafford going to the Underdogs. For the Infirmary, I'm going to hand them out a B grade for getting Quentin Grimes. Grimes has provided great support this season so far for the Philadelphia 76ers and for Ryan W. Grimes has been averaging 14.6 points per game this season, as well as 3.9 rebounds, 4.2 assists, and 2.3 three-pointers made. Grimes is definitely the best player performing so far in this deal, which is why Ryan W gets the B grade. As for Ryan S and the Underdogs, I'm unfortunately handing out a D+ grade for this one. Daniel Gafford was able to perform solidly for Ryan while he was on the squad, but due to injuries and other contributing factors, Ryan S decided to drop Daniel Gafford from the roster, and he is no longer on the team. All this contributes to the grade being D+. Next up, we go 17 days later to November 18th with a trade that's going to look very familiar. In the third trade of the season, we saw Harry the Hawk getting back Domantas Sabonis, as well as the 13th and 14th round picks from Benny's Bistro. The Bistro got in return Bogdan Bogdanovic, a second round pick, and an 8th round pick from Harry the Hawk. This trade sees Sabonis returning to Harry the Hawk, but unfortunately, it did not provide a good grade out for Kenny. This trade is going to be a D- as Sabonis has been dealing with an injury to his leg that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time, more so. There is a chance that Sabonis could be back, helping contend for a playoff push or a good run in the consolation bracket. As for Benny, I'm going to give him a C plus on this grade. Benny forecasted his fortune telling skills with this one as he traded Sabonis right as he got his first injury of the season. Being able to flip Sabonis into a second round pick as well as the eighth round pick is something worthy of the C plus grade. Despite those pick upgrades, the reason for the grade not being higher is that Bogdanovich has not been playing very well and is actually no longer on the Bistro roster at this time. We come up next with one of our first league-shattering deals to happen in the association. On November 20th, we saw Wiggins of Nas acquire Luka Doncic, Tyrese Maxey, a fifth-round pick, 13th and 14th round pick from Captain's Carnival. In exchange, Taylor got Noah Clowney, Moses Moody, and a first, second, and fourth round pick from Wiggins of Nas. Nate went all in on this deal and was able to get a package worthy of an A grade. Anytime you can get Luka and Maxey together in one deal is definitely something that's worth getting a high grade. I'm not going to give this grade an A plus just yet, as it was a costly trade for Wiggins of Nas and next year's draft capital, giving up 3 of his first 4 picks. I'm going to give Taylor a C plus grade for this blockbuster deal. Giving up Luka and Maxey is obviously going to cost you in the current season, but receiving the high draft capital of a first, second, and fourth, as well as getting Noah Clowney, who could have potential to be a strong keeper player, is something worth giving the C plus grade for, in my opinion. We follow up that massive trade with another player of massive quality getting shifted to another squad. In this next trade, we see Cat acquiring Ace Bailey, a first round and third round pick from aspirations of a title. In return, Tim is able to get Giannis Antetokounmpo and the 12th and 14th round picks from Cat. For Jordan, I'm going to give him a C minus grade on this deal. Jordan was able to get pretty good value out of Giannis, receiving back that first and third round pick. And he potentially got a good keeper in Ace Bailey. However, due to some injuries and other factors, Ace is no longer on the Cat roster. On the flip side, I'm going to give Aspirations a B minus grade here. Despite the potential that Giannis brings to Tim's squad, he has shown some injury concerns and missed a lot of time already since the deal. If Giannis is able to stay healthy and contribute for the entire season without injury, we could see this grade at the end of the season changing for aspirations of a title, making it worth the high draft cost that Tim sent away. Our next trade we take a look at involves the Heatles and a big lump with Knobs. John Frank was able to acquire DeAndre Ayton and the 8th round pick from Chris in exchange for Colin Sexton and a 6th round pick. Looking at how the trade is panned out, I'm going to give John Frank a B plus on this one. DeAndre Ayton has been a very valuable player this season, providing some exceptional field goal percentage and averaging almost a double-double. Being able to get this kind of a player for only a mild pick downgrade is why I'm going to hand out a B plus for the Heatles. As for Chris, I'm going to give him a C minus on this grade. At the time of the deal, Colin Sexton was playing very well, but unfortunately Chris had to drop Colin Sexton due to some injuries. He is no longer on the Knobs roster, but the C minus grade is not lower due to the fact that Knobs is able to get a pretty solid pick upgrade in the draft for 2026. Next up, we find a big lump with Knobs involved in another deal, this time with Cat. Knobs decided to trade away Jalen Duren and a 7th round pick to Cat in exchange for OG Anunoby and a 3rd round draft pick. For Jordan, I'm going to give him a B grade on the deal. Being able to acquire Jalen Duren and not give up a 1st or 2nd round pick, considering how his value looks, is a very impressive deal for Jordan to make. Being able to make the deal as well as still getting a mid-round pick in the 7th round is why this is a B grade. The grade might have been higher if Jalen Duren had a little bit more keeper availability left, although he is unfortunately going to be out of keeper selections at the end of the season. On the other side, Chris is going to receive a C plus grade on this one. OG Anunoby was beginning to perform a little bit better at the time of this deal, and along with being able to get another pretty solid pick upgrade is the reason why I'm going to give Chris the C plus grade. There's going to be more to come, however, on OG Anunoby here soon. Next up, we have a trade with the most assets being shifted of any deal so far. and the third trade in a row involving a big lump with knobs. This time, Chris is trading with the Jimmy Chitwoods. The Chitwoods were able to receive Josh Giddey, Cam Johnson, a 4th-round pick, 10th-round pick, and 13th-round pick from Knobs. In exchange, Chris received TJ McConnell, Kevin Herter, a 2nd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and the 14th round pick from the Chitwoods. On the Chitwood side of this deal, I'm going to give this a B grade. While Josh Giddey has been an incredible performer on the season so far for the Chicago Bulls, providing near triple-double averages, he is now going to miss an extended period of time with a hamstring injury. Cam Johnson was also rounding into form as well, but now is going to receive some time on the injured list as well. The reason for the B grade is that despite the injuries, the potential that Giddey and Johnson bring for the pick cost that Chitwoods gave up is something that could be very valuable near the end of the season and into the playoffs. On the other side, I'm giving Chris a C+ grade on this deal. The reason for the C+ grade is now at the time of this trade, Knobs now controls 7 picks in the first 5 rounds of next year's draft. The reason for the grade not being higher is partly due to the fact that McConnell and Herter were both dropped from the roster shortly after the deal. As we head into the next deal, we find the final trade involving a big lump with Knobs, this time making a deal with the Infirmary. The Infirmary is able to acquire Kobe White, OG Anunoby, and the 9th and 14th round picks from Knobs. On the flip side, Chris gets back Tumani Kamara, Dyson Daniels, and the 5th and 8th round picks from the Infirmary. For Ryan W. on this deal, I'm going to give him a C+ grade. While Kobe White and OG Anunoby are big names in the NBA world, so far in the season, Kobe White and OG have had similar production numbers to Kamara and Daniels. Some of this is due to Kobe missing so much time on the season and OG struggles at the beginning of the season. This trade definitely could have some different grades if we look back at the end of the season, but for right now, it's worthy of a C+. As for Knobs, this is going to be the best deal he's made so far and deserving of a B+ in my opinion. Chris now has 8 picks in the first 5 rounds after this deal, and both Kamara and Daniels are pretty solid keeper selections to have in next year's draft. It's definitely a deal looking more for the future, but Daniels and Kamara have still been performing well, as we did see Daniels be the player nominee for Knobs this week. Following up this deal, we find the Infirmary making another trade, this time with the Underdogs. The Underdogs get Jaden McDaniels, a 4th, 6th, and 7th round pick from the Infirmary in exchange for Stephen Curry, the 8th, 9th, and 10th round picks from Ryan S. The Ryans get together on another trade this year for the second time, and starting with Ryan W. and the Infirmary, I'm going to give him an A- grade here. For Ryan W., to get Stephen Curry without trading any picks in the first 3 rounds is something very impressive to do. It would have been nice to see Ryan be able to hold on to Jaden McDaniels and have both of the players on the roster. Nonetheless, acquiring Steph, who is still playing lights out basketball at his age, is worthy of the A- grade. On the flip side, Ryan S. is going to get a B+ on the deal. This grade would have been an A if Ryan S. was able to get any of the top 3 picks away from the Infirmary. Nonetheless, Jaden McDaniels is still playing at an incredible rate this season so far, and the pick upgrades in the 4th, 6th, and 7th round will definitely be something to keep a note on in next year's draft. This deal between the Ryans is going to be the highest combined grade total of any trade we've seen so far in the league. Following up this trade, we see another deal with 2 teams that have already made trades in the season so far, those being Cat and Betty's Bistro. In this deal, we see Jordan getting Rudy Gobert and the 11th round pick from the Bistro in exchange for Duncan Robinson and a 5th round pick that belonged to Jordan. On the deal, I'm going to give Jordan a B+ grade here. Jordan is definitely loading up on centers for Cat Squad as he now possesses Duren and Rudy Gobert and more to come in a later deal at the center position. Adding all this size to the roster is definitely looking to target the rebounds and blocks and be something for Cat to make some improvements in the season moving forward. The pick downgrade that he made in the deal as well is not too bad considering the quality of player Rudy Gobert is in fantasy. On the flip side, I'm going to give Benny a C grade on this deal. The grade would have been higher if Duncan had been able to continue with his performances at the beginning of the season, Although with players returning to Detroit's roster from injury, with the likes of Tobias Harris and Jaden Ivey playing more, it has brought a slight decline to Robinson's performance in the season. Nonetheless, the upgrade to the 5th round is something worthy of keeping this grade at a C. Next up, we take a look at the first deal of 2026, a trade between CAD acquiring Nikola Vucevic and a 12th round pick from the Infirmary in exchange for Brandon Miller and the 7th round pick from CAD. Taking a look at Jordan's part of the deal, I'm going to hand out a B+ grade for the trade. Vucevic provides some more stable center support for Jordan's roster, and he's been playing as a top 60 player so far this season. It was the right time, I believe, as well, to move off of Brandon Miller to get a more consistent, valuable, and available player on his roster. On Ryan W's side of the trade, I'm going to hand him a C grade right now. Brandon Miller is a player who already is showing a lot of injury concerns in his young career, but his flashes of brilliance might be worth the risk later on for the Infirmary. The grade is reflective of what Miller has produced right now, but when we take a look at the end of the season, we might expect a very different grade if Miller is worth the risk and pans out for Ryan W. Finally, we take a look at the last deal that's been made in the league so far. In this deal, we see the Heatles getting Darius Garland, their 6th round pick back from their previous deal with Knobs, and an 11th round pick from Knobs. We see Chris getting Isaac Okoro, a 5th and 10th round pick from the Heatles. Handing out grades on this one, I'm going to give the Heatles a B- grade on this deal. Garland is a risky player to take a shot on right now, considering not only the injury history he's dealing with this season, but also the fact that his performance has dropped dramatically from last season. If Garland can find his form and be able to produce well for John Frank, we definitely could see this grade being improved when we revisit trades at the end of the season. On the other end, I am going to give Chris a D+ on this grade. Despite all the risks laid out about Darius Garland previously, I would love to see Chris get a little more value out of Darius Garland on the deal. Getting only a 1-round pick upgrade on each pick traded is still something that's solid, but you would like to see a little bit more trading a player like Garland and the potential that he can bring to a squad. The D+ grade is also contributed to the fact that Isaac Okoro has been dropped from the roster already and is currently a free agent on the waiver wire. It's been a pretty active market so far in the association when it comes to trades, and we still have a lot of time for trades to continue to happen in the season so far. Just a reminder for all the managers in the league, the trade deadline is February 19th, so we still have about a month and a half left in the season for teams to adjust their rosters before the playoffs come around. Please make sure to evaluate your rosters and get those deals in before it's too late. Thank you again, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Association Pod. I'm so thankful for all the support you guys have given so far, and we look forward to seeing you guys in next week's episode. God bless and take care. Good luck in Week 12.